"Grandpa, you don't need to come this year. She probably won't even notice." That's what my son told me just 5 days before her birthday. He didn't say it with anger. He said it with something colder, dismissal, as if I were a distant neighbor asking to borrow a chair, not the man who held his daughter the night she was born. I hung up, heart beating slower than usual. Then I checked the mailbox anyway. Once, twice, 3 times. I knew it wouldn't be there, but still. Some part of me hoped a mistake had been made, that a glittery pink envelope would appear, with a childish scrawl spelling out my name. "Grandpa," it used to say, "don't be late." But this year, there was no envelope, no phone call, no knock on my door. It wasn't just a birthday. It was the first one I had ever missed. Every other year, I was the one tying balloons at dawn, balancing a cake on my knees in the car, carrying her on my shoulders when she got tired of running between games. And when they couldn't afford things, I quietly made them appear. Streamers, bounce houses, fairy tale banners with her name lit in gold. But now I was invisible. My son and his wife said it was going to be just close family. I nearly laughed. I was the one who built the family. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the floral calendar on the fridge. Her birthday was circled in purple marker. I had done that 2 months ago, right after wiring my son the money for what he told me were repairs. Repairs. That word rang in my ears now, cold and hollow. Because last week I overheard my granddaughter saying to someone on the phone, "It's going to be magical this year. We hired a professional decorator. The whole garden's getting redone." And just like that, I knew. My money had paid for the party. The lights, the flowers, the balloons I would never see. And yet I wasn't good enough to be there. Not even invited. I sat there for hours, staring at that circled date. The day I was supposed to bring her the book I made from our old photos. But I wouldn't get to see her open it. Wouldn't get to see if she remembered the stories behind the images. Wouldn't get to see if she remembered me at all. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, something inside me quieted. Not with peace. With heartbreak. Friends, let me pause here for a moment. Would you mind writing in the comments? Where are you listening from? Have you ever experienced something similar? A moment when family made you feel like a stranger? Your stories matter. If this touched something in you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. It helps us grow, and it helps more people know they're not alone. Now, let's continue, because the story isn't over yet. The next morning, I stared at my phone longer than I should have. I knew what I was about to do. I knew how it would end. But sometimes a father keeps calling, even when the silence has already answered. I dialed his number, straight to voicemail. No ringtone, no pause, just a quick cut, like the door had been slammed before I even knocked. I stared at the wall, then typed a message. "Hey, do you need help with the setup? I can bring extra chairs or anything you need." I erased it once, retyped it with fewer words, sent it. Then I waited. 1 hour, 3. The entire afternoon passed. No reply, not even a thanks, not even a "we're good." Just a screen that stayed cold, blank, like I hadn't built their world from the ground up. Like I hadn't held him through 100 sleepless nights when he was young and afraid of the dark. The hardest part wasn't the rejection. It was the ease with which it came. No hesitation, no guilt. He had locked me out of the one day that used to mean everything to both of us. I remember when she turned 3, the cake he couldn't afford. I bought it and let him take credit. When she turned 6 and wanted a princess canopy, I stayed up until 2 a.m. assembling it alone in their living room. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it mattered. Because memories like that, they're supposed to be passed down. But now those memories were being rewritten, with me erased. I sat by the window as the light dimmed, holding my phone like it might still buzz, like he might come to his senses. But it stayed quiet. Not even a wrong number to disturb the weight of the silence. It's a strange thing when a father realizes his name doesn't echo in his child's world anymore. When a lifetime of effort is reduced to an unanswered message. When love becomes something disposable. Edited out of the picture, one ignored call at a time. Outside, the wind moved the branches gently, like someone waving from far away. Inside, my world stayed still. And somewhere deep in my chest, I felt something shift. Not break, not shatter, just fall quiet. Because I finally understood. I wasn't just uninvited. I was unwanted. 2 days before the party, I walked to the local grocery store. I didn't need anything urgent, just bread, some tea, and maybe a few moments around other voices that weren't filled with silence. The kind of noise that reminds you you're still part of the world, even if your family has forgotten. I moved slowly through the aisles, letting time pass. I don't know why I paused near the floral section. Maybe it was the soft pinks and purples that reminded me of the party themes I used to plan for her. Balloons, streamers, candles. All those little things children forget, but grandfathers never do. That's when I heard them. 2 women chatting near the bouquets. Their voices were light, excited. "They say it's going to be like a royal ball this year," one said. "Did you see the tent they're setting up?" The other whispered, laughing. "It's huge. I heard they're bringing in chandeliers." Chandeliers? For a 9-year-old. I stood very still, pretending to examine a bouquet of lilies. I didn't want to intrude. I didn't even want them to see me. I just needed to hear it. And I did. They kept talking about the party, about the garden makeover, the imported cupcakes, the custom photo booth, the live violinist. Extravagant, magical, expensive. And slowly, without meaning to, I smiled. Not a happy smile, not bitter either. Just the kind that forms when something inside you clicks into place. I knew. I had paid for it. Every string of lights, every floral arrangement, every ribbon with her name embossed in gold foil. All of it came from the transfer I made weeks ago when my son said he needed help with repairs around the house. Repairs. That word still echoed in my head like a joke everyone but me was laughing at. I had funded the celebration I wasn't even allowed to attend. And maybe the worst part wasn't the lie. It was that they had assumed I wouldn't find out. That I was too old, too simple, too far removed to understand where my money went. They thought they could erase me, even while using the things I gave to build their illusion. I walked out of the store without buying a thing. The wind was sharp that day, but I didn't zip my coat. I wanted to feel something, even if it was just the cold. Because sometimes when your name is left off the guest list, it's not about the party. It's about the realization that the people you love most have learned how to celebrate without you. And worse, they've learned how to profit from your love, while pretending it never existed. 2 months before the party, the phone had rung on a Sunday morning. My son's voice came through cheerful, almost rushed, like someone trying to get past the small talk quickly. He spoke about the weather, his job, how fast his daughter was growing. Then after a pause that felt too calculated, he slipped it in. "Hey, Dad, the house needs some work. Nothing huge, just repairs. Gutters, paint. A few updates before winter." I remember nodding, even though he couldn't see me. I said I'd help. Of course I would help. That's what fathers do. Even when the help starts to sound more like obligation than gratitude. Even when the calls only come when something is needed. He named the amount, casually. Too casually. Almost like he'd already rehearsed it. And I transferred it that same day. No lecture, no questions. Just a simple message. Let me know if you need more. But I wasn't as naive as he thought. A week later, I overheard him on the phone when I stopped by unannounced. He was pacing on the back porch, smiling, distracted. He didn't notice I had stepped inside. "Yeah, we went with the luxe package. The full layout. Gold accents, silk draping, the custom archway. She's gonna lose her mind when she sees it. Luxe package, not gutter work, not insulation." He didn't use the company name, but I remembered it anyway. I'd seen the same one on a flyer years ago when I helped a neighbor plan her anniversary. A boutique event company known for its overpriced elegance and exclusive bookings. It hit me like cold water. He had lied. He hadn't borrowed the money to fix his home. He had used my trust, my history of always saying yes, to fund a fantasy. A dream birthday for his daughter, with none of the reality attached. I sat on his porch for 10 minutes after he went back inside. He never came to check on me, never noticed the tightness in my chest. I wanted to believe maybe his heart was in the right place. That maybe he just didn't know how to ask me directly to pay for the party. That maybe pride got in the way. But the truth? He knew exactly what he was doing. And the cruelest part wasn't the lie itself. It was that he believed I didn't deserve to know. That I could give, and give freely, without needing to belong. I wasn't just left off the guest list. I was cut from the story entirely, like a man who delivers the bricks for a cathedral, but is never invited inside to see the stained glass glow. And still, even with the truth clawing at me, I didn't say a word. I let the money go. I let the silence grow. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, she would remember me anyway. Maybe when she saw the balloons, the colors, the shimmering lights, maybe she'd ask, "Did Grandpa help with this?" But deep down, I already knew the answer. She wouldn't know, because my name wasn't mentioned, not once. I had become the invisible architect of her joy. And that realization, more than the lie, more than the money, that's what hurt the most. The morning of her birthday arrived like any other, only quieter. Too quiet for a house that used to burst with ribbons and laughter on this day. I had laid out my clothes the night before, not because I thought I'd be going, but because part of me still held on to hope like a trembling thread. A pressed white shirt, polished shoes, a small gift wrapped in gold paper, a book I had made myself, filled with pictures of her and me through the years, our smiles, our moments, our little traditions that no one else had bothered to remember. I stood by the window at 10 a.m., then at 11. By noon, the street was filling up with cars, neighbors, classmates, people carrying boxes of food and glittering gift bags. The music started, soft at first, then louder, joyful, proud. I could see the garden from my porch. They had turned it into something magical. White tents arched over elegant tables. Pink and lavender balloons danced in the breeze. A giant banner with her name in gold cursive swayed above the gate. There were children running with painted faces, and servers dressed in black weaving through the crowd with trays of lemonade and bite-sized cakes. It was beautiful. It was the kind of party she'd dreamt of when she was little. The kind she used to whisper to me about during bedtime stories. And I had helped build it, brick by invisible brick. But as the celebration grew louder, my house remained still. No knock, no text, no "come join us, Dad," not even a passing glance toward my front door. I sat on my porch in silence, my gift resting on my lap, untouched. I could hear her laugh, a sound I used to think was mine to protect. Now it belonged to strangers. I wondered if she even knew I was home, if she asked about me, if someone changed the subject quickly when she did. I wondered if she noticed that the man who never missed a single birthday was suddenly missing, or if they'd erased me so gently, so thoroughly that her heart didn't even feel the gap. I imagined her blowing out candles on a cake I indirectly paid for, surrounded by people clapping for a scene they believed was whole. And I couldn't help but feel like a ghost in my own bloodline, not angry, not even bitter, just hollow, like a seat had been left out on purpose. Like they'd set the table and counted chairs, and made sure there wasn't one with my name on it. There's a pain that doesn't scream. It sits quietly, like an old friend, and watches your memories be rewritten in real time. As the sun moved higher, the sound of celebration grew. Music, laughter, joy. And just 20 feet away, a man sat in a pressed white shirt, with a gift no one would open, waiting for a door that would never knock. I didn't leave the porch, because somewhere deep down, a father still waits, even when he's already been forgotten. I settled into the old wooden chair at my kitchen table, the one that creaked beneath me just like it did when my granddaughter first learned to climb into it. The room around me was dim, only the soft morning light filtering through lace curtains, and the hum of her party drifted faintly through the walls, a distant echo of voices and music I once orchestrated. In front of me stood a chipped porcelain teacup, the one she painted for me in kindergarten, its surface still decorated with bright red handprints, and my name scrawled crookedly in purple marker. I lifted the cup slowly, as though raising a glass in a grand hall, and paused to steady my hand. My heart thudded against the wood grain beneath my palm. Outside, the party raged on, children shrieking in delight, neighbors offering cheerful waves, the live violinist's notes cutting through the afternoon air. But here the only sound was the steady drip of a leaky faucet, each drop a reminder that things, once set in motion, go on whether you're part of them or not. "To her," I whispered, voice low and cracked, "may she always know love, even if she forgets its roots." I closed my eyes and let the silence stretch, as if the words themselves would carry across the walls and reach her. I imagined her small fingers curling around the stem of a champagne flute, though of course they didn't serve champagne at 9. Imagined her raising it with a grin, believing in every note of that toast. For a moment, the ache in my chest became a kind of release. It wasn't anger that flooded me, nor bitterness. It was sorrow, pure and unguarded, rising like steam from that lukewarm tea. I felt the weight of years, every ribbon tied at dawn, every cake delivered with a whispered surprise, every time I held her hand when she was too shy to speak. All of it felt both precious and fragile, like crystal teacups teetering on a high shelf. When I set the cup back down, it rang softly against the saucer, a small, clear note that echoed the unsent invitation in my mind. I stood, letting the ache settle into quiet resolve. I would endure this day, this absence, knowing I had given everything I could. And if she ever asked whose hands shaped her joy, I would be there with the answer, even if she had to learn it the hard way. Because even in the deepest silence, a grandfather's love still speaks. The afternoon sun slanted through my lace curtains when there came a firm knock at the door, a sound so rare it made my heart skip. I opened it to find Mrs. Langley standing on the threshold, her face unexpectedly flushed, eyes reddened as though she'd been crying. She clutched a small plate of cookies, half of them crumbled from the moment she'd rushed out. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she began, voice trembling, "but I saw your granddaughter's party. I saw the lights, the decorations, and I thought, where is he?" I closed the door behind her, guiding her to a kitchen chair as I sank onto the one opposite. The plate sat between us like a fragile truce. For a moment, we simply held each other's gaze, two people bound by the invisible ties of community, watching a family unravel before our eyes. I just don't understand," she said, her voice catching. "They've been in that house for years. You've always been here helping them. And today it was all so grand, so joyous, but you weren't there." Tears welled in her eyes, and she brushed them away on the edge of her sleeve. She glanced at the plate of cookies, as if tasting grief itself. "You built that family?" she whispered, her words as soft and sharp as broken glass. "You're the one who raised those walls, who patched those roofs, who stood in those rooms telling bedtime stories. And now they're living in the house you raised, celebrating in the garden you financed, and you're shut out on your own porch." Her truth cut through me. It echoed every silent tear I'd held in since morning. I imagined her standing outside, peeking through the gates, so proud of a party I had funded, and so shocked to find me absent. I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell her it wasn't that they didn't love me. They simply forgot how. But the words lodged in my throat like stones. Instead, I reached over and took her hand, weathered and warm from years of tending her own garden. "Thank you," I whispered, voice thick, not for the cookies or for her kindness, but for seeing me, for naming what I could not bring myself to say. She nodded, her eyes bright. "They're children of your love," she said gently, "but right now they need to be reminded whose blood runs in their veins." In that moment, I felt less like a shattered man and more like a grandfather with one last chance to prove that love isn't a gift reserved for those standing in the spotlight. It's the quiet force that carries you back home, even when you've lost your way. Mrs. Langley stood to leave, but before she did, she pressed the plate of cookies into my arms. "For later," she said, "you'll need the sugar." Then she paused at the door, turned back, and added, "And remember, roots run deeper than gates." And as she walked away, I realized that even when your own family silences your name, a neighbor's voice can remind you that the legacy you built still stands. Beneath every floorboard, behind every window, and inside every heart that truly knows you. That evening, I sat in my living room wrapped in a blanket, scrolling through my phone for something, anything, to distract me from the ache in my chest. Then a notification lit up the screen, a repost from my granddaughter's mom. I tapped it. There she was, my bright-eyed little girl, her grin wide enough to fill a ballroom. She wore the pale pink dress I'd helped pick out, the one with tiny pearls stitched along the neckline. Behind her, strung across the garden arch, was the banner I had designed and gifted years ago, hand-painted letters glimmering gold against a lavender sky. It should have made my chest swell with pride. Instead, I felt my throat burn, because in that photo, so perfect, so radiant, they had cropped me out. No hint of my weathered hands in the corner, no trace of my name signing the bottom corner of the design. It was as though a magician erased the maker, leaving only the trick. My vision blurred with tears. I pressed my finger against the image, trying to feel the texture of the canvas I had once rolled out in the early morning light. I remembered the nights I stayed up, brush in hand, humming lullabies while every stroke of paint whispered, "I love you." Yet here it hung for the world to see, her celebration, her joy, straight from the hands that bankrolled it, remade into a seamless illusion that pretended I never existed. A gut punch ache settled in my chest. It wasn't just humiliation. It was the knowledge that my presence had become embarrassing, an inconvenient truth they simply retouched away, like a stain on a family portrait, quietly cropped out so the picture would look perfect. I closed the app with a trembling hand and stared at the dark screen. The room felt colder, lonelier. I thought of every moment I'd woven into her life, teaching her to tie her shoes on that same garden path, helping her chase fireflies under the lanterns I strung there, holding her as she whispered that she felt safe when I was near. I felt the scorch of betrayal, not the kind that flares once and fades, but the slow-burning ember that smolders in your bones long after the fire has passed. Finally, I set the phone down and shut my eyes, imagining the banner unrolling again. I could almost hear the soft creak of the canvas, smell the fresh paint, feel the weight of the roll against my palm. They may have cropped me out of their picture, but they could never erase the hours I spent making it. They could hide my face, but they would never hide the love that bled into every stroke. And in that silence, behind closed lids, I vowed that one day she would see it all. Every brushstroke, every tear, every silent sacrifice. Because truth has a way of resurfacing, even after the sharpest edits. The next morning, I woke to the echo of crickets in an empty house, the hangover of yesterday's grief, heavier than any wine. I knew I couldn't stay behind those four walls another day without losing what was left of myself. I stood, buttoned my coat, and walked out the door. Not to argue, not to beg, but simply to see with my own eyes just how much distance had grown between us. The sidewalk felt unforgiving under my shoes, every crack and uneven stone a reminder that life doesn't wait for forgiveness. I passed the rose bush we'd planted together last spring, the one she snipped blossoms from to give me in the kitchen, and the petals lay scattered like forgotten promises. As I neared the gate of their garden, the laughter grew clear, children squealing as they chased one another, guests exchanging wide-eyed congratulations. The tents glowed in the morning light, their drapes fluttering like flags proclaiming celebration. I paused at the threshold, heart pounding so loud I was certain they could hear it, a slow drum of both pride and sorrow. For a moment I closed my eyes, believing I could summon the warmth of belonging back into my chest. But when I opened them again, reality shivered through me like an icicle. They looked so happy, so complete, in a scene I'd helped create yet was forbidden to enter. My name wasn't uttered once. My face would not be seen in any photograph. In that heartbeat, something inside me shattered free of fear and disbelief. I realized I didn't have to stand there as a silent witness to my own erasure. I didn't owe them my presence when they had cast me aside. So I turned away, stepping off their property with a clear mind and a steady pace. The pain still throbbed, but tangled with it was a fierce clarity. I would no longer be the invisible architect of their joy. I would rebuild my own life beyond their walls, where my worth wasn't measured by invitations I never received. And with every step I took, the distance felt less like loss and more like the opening of a new path, one I would walk on my own terms. I lingered at the far edge of the garden, hidden by a row of hydrangeas, whose blooms glowed in the afternoon sun. My heart pounded in my ears as I watched the party swirl before me, balloons bobbing like bright planets, children chasing bubbles that caught the light, and tables heavy with treats that I had quietly paid for. I told myself I would simply observe, remain a silent guardian at a safe distance, knowing that pity was no gift, and that their celebration should go on without me. Then I saw it, a little boy no more than 5, wobbling on unsteady legs as he pointed toward me, his voice carrying above the music. "Mom, look, that man, he looks like Grandpa." The entire scene stilled. His mother knelt beside him and followed his gaze. In that instant, dozens of faces turned my way. Guests, servers, even the violinist paused mid-note. All eyes on the man whose name wasn't on the guest list. My granddaughter, standing by the cake table, looked up too. Her face went white. She recognized me. Her eyes widened as if something inside her remembered a dream she had forgotten. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The laughter stopped, the music dropped to a quiet tremble, and a hush filled the air, thicker than any silence I had felt all week. In that heartbeat, I saw every year flash before my mind's eye. Her tiny hand clutching mine as we walked in this very garden, her breathless giggles as I lifted her high above the tulips, the whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa," that echoed in my soul. I felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken words settle in my chest. She took a hesitant step forward, as though crossing a stretch of time to reach me. The color drained from her cheeks, replaced by a question. How could this man, standing just yards away, have been home all along while she celebrated? I swallowed hard. The sting of tears pricked my eyes, but I fought them down. I wanted this moment to be hers, to let her feel the confusion, the longing, the ache of a love so present it was once the very air she breathed. After a long moment suspended between past and present, she blinked and the world exhaled. Music resumed, laughter bubbled, and the party snapped back into motion. Children running off, friends chatting, the violinist striking a joyful chord. But something had changed. She met my gaze one more time, a flicker of something raw and unguarded passing between us. Then she turned away, her small figure swallowed by the crowd. I remained still, my heart breaking and mending in the same breath. For the first time in days, I realized they had seen me, not merely as the man who provided, but as the grandfather who belonged. And though the path back to forgiveness would be long, the simplest truth shone clearer than any banner. Love that waits patiently, even when forgotten, can still be found. Later that evening, the house felt hollow, every room echoing with the aftermath of a celebration that had left more wounds than joy. I was in the kitchen, stacking the few dishes I had used, my hands moving, almost by habit, when I heard the door creak open behind me. My son stepped inside, face drawn tight under the overhead light, eyes flickering between anger and shame. He closed the door softly, as though afraid I might vanish. "Why did you come?" he asked, voice low and trembling. "You weren't invited." I turned, letting the weight of the question settle between us like smoke. My heart thundered in my chest, but my voice was steady as I spoke. "You asked for help. I gave it. You needed support. I showed up." I placed a saucepan gently on the counter, its clatter loud in the quiet room. "But when I needed respect, you disappeared." His shoulders sagged, as though he'd been carrying my words in his pocket and had finally let them fall. He looked away, unable to meet my gaze, and the kitchen light cast long shadows across his face. Shadows I once helped drive out with laughter and bedtime stories. Now they seemed to cling to him like regret. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the embarrassment of being caught, the guilt of having built a grand spectacle that shut out the man who made it possible. For a moment he said nothing, and the only sound was the faint dripping of the faucet. I closed my own mouth against the tide of things I might say, accusations, anger, pain, But instead, I let the silence speak. Finally, he stepped forward, hands trembling. "Dad," he began, voice breaking, I I thought I was protecting her from feeling guilty. I didn't want her to worry about you getting tired or feeling left out." His words stumbled as though he were searching for the right light to shine in the dark. I was wrong. I studied his face, the child I raised, the man who once ran to me with scraped knees and bubbling stories. My own eyes burned, but I held back the flood. "You didn't protect her," I said softly. "You protected yourself. You erased me." He closed the distance then, the kitchen shrinking around us. He reached out, hesitated, then dropped his hand. The gesture itself was an apology, a fragment of humility in a room built on pride. I felt my chest loosen, the anger giving way to something rawer, the memory of all we once shared, and the hope that it wasn't too late to rescue it from the embers. He exhaled, a shudder that passed from his shoulders to his fingertips. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and the words hung between us, fragile as the porcelain teacup still drying in the sink. "I never wanted you to feel unwanted." I nodded, letting the honesty settle into my bones. The night outside was cool, the stars distant but steadfast. And in that quiet kitchen, with broken pride and half-spoken regrets, I realized that confrontation, though painful, held the promise of something truer, a chance to rebuild, not with decorations and grand gestures, but with unvarnished truth and the respect that had once defined our family. I reached into my coat pocket and withdrew a crisp envelope, the same manila kind my grandson uses to hand me drawings. I placed it between us on the kitchen table, the edge sliding toward him like a challenge. He looked up, confusion flickering in his eyes. I spread its contents. An invoice nearly as tall as the teapot in the corner, each line item detailing the gold foil banners, silk drapes, professional lighting rigs, floral arches, and bespoke seating arrangements. The total hovered at the top in bold type, an amount far beyond what gutters or paint ever cost. His breath caught. His face whitened. He traced the numbers with a shaking finger as though fearing the paper would transform back into empty words. That's everything?" he managed, voice unsteady as though speaking too loudly might dispel the truth. I met his gaze without anger, only the quiet certainty of a man who knows he has been both used and forgotten. "Every penny," I said softly, "paid in full." The silence that followed was thick, like a winter dawn when the world holds its breath beneath freshly fallen snow. He opened his mouth and closed it again, searching for a response that didn't come. Instead, he leaned forward and picked up a single line. "Chandelier rental, $200. His voice cracked. "You paid this for her party, and I didn't even invite you?" I didn't answer. I simply watched the storm of guilt and shame cross his face. The years of unspoken debts, of late-night drives to the florist, of whispered thank yous he never gave, collapsed into that one moment, laid bare on the table. Memory flooded me. The first party I funded when his daughter turned 5, the look of wonder on her face as balloons floated overhead. The night I stayed up past midnight stringing twinkle lights in their backyard so she could chase fireflies in a make-believe fairyland. The dozens of celebrations that stitched our hearts together, one ribbon at a time. And now all those moments were cataloged not as love, but as bills. Debts he assumed never needed payment. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "Dad," he whispered. His hand hovered over the invoice, uncertain whether to push it away or fold it into a letter of apology. The silence unspooled further, the kitchen fan humming overhead, as if urging him to speak. But the words came only in tears gliding down his cheeks, silent confessions more powerful than any apology. I picked up the invoice and refolded it, letting him see the crease lines. "I didn't need you to pay me back," I said quietly, voice thick with memory. "I needed you to remember me." He nodded, unable to look away from the paper now folded small and thin, like a confession tucked into a child's pocket. In that moment, the weight of all those decorations became more than mere trappings of celebration. It became the unspoken language of a father's love, misread as obligation until now. And as he reached out, fingertips brushing the edge of the envelope, I knew it was the first step toward rewriting our story, line by line, memory by memory, so that the next chapter would include the one person who had always earned a seat at our table. The morning light poured through my curtains as I heard a soft knock on my door. My granddaughter stood there, her small frame silhouetted by the sunrise, eyes wide with questions she hadn't yet learned to mask. In her hand, she held a crumpled note, her mother's words scribbled in haste. "Dad said you helped with the party. Why weren't you there?" She shuffled her feet, the innocence of her confusion cutting deeper than any argument. I patted the chair beside me and beckoned her in. Her dress, still speckled with yesterday's cake crumbs, reminded me of the laughter I'd missed. I motioned to the kitchen table where a half-empty teacup waited like a silent sentinel. She perched on the edge of the seat, head tilted. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Mom said you gave money, but you weren't invited." The question hung in the air, fragile and honest, demanding a truth I had guarded behind layers of pride and pain. I nodded, watching her process something far beyond her 9 years. Her gaze drifted to the envelope that lay folded neatly beside my teacup, the one holding the invoice, still marked with every golden stripe and silk drape I'd paid for. She recognized it from the day before, the tears in her mother's eyes when it was placed on the table. "Why," she began, but words faltered. I reached out, gently smoothing a stray curl behind her ear. My voice came soft, each syllable carrying the weight of decades. Sometimes the people we love forget to include the ones who build their joy. Her eyes welled, a single tear slipping down her cheek. For a moment, the world outside faded, the hum of midday traffic, the distant chime of a neighbor's doorbell, until there was nothing but the two of us and a lifetime of unspoken memories. I smiled, the ache in my chest both present and healing. "One day," I whispered, "you will understand why I stayed close, even when they turned away. Love isn't just in celebrations you see. It's in quiet sacrifices you might not notice until you're older." She reached for my hand, small and warm, and squeezed. In that simple squeeze lay more understanding than any explanation I could offer. And as she leaned her head against my shoulder, I knew that although I'd been unseen for a time, my love had taken root in her heart, and that truth, once unwrapped, would endure far longer than any party decorations. Weeks slipped by like pages torn from a calendar, each day marked by the quiet routine of my kitchen, tea steeping, the ticking clock, the empty chair that once held my family. I busied myself with small tasks to stave off the ache, tending my rose bush that still bore the marks of her party, repairing the loose handle on my front gate, stacking firewood for the coming autumn. Every task was a reminder that life continued beyond the echoes of that celebration, yet my heart waited for something more than chores. Then one afternoon the mail arrived differently, not a postcard, not a flyer, but a single thick envelope addressed to me in my son's handwriting. My hands trembled as I slid it open, half fearing another invitation I'd no longer need. Instead, there it was, a letter that crackled like hope in my lap. He wrote of restless nights and memories replayed too often, of glimpses of my empty chair in dreams, and how that vision haunted him more than any scolding. He confessed that he'd built a spectacle for his daughter, to mask his own fear of confronting his past, of admitting that he too carried wounds I once tried to heal. He wrote, "I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting her from old-fashioned guilt. But I see now I was just hiding from the mirror." Tears blurred the ink as I read and reread each line. The apology wasn't wrapped in excuses or half-hearted remorse. It was raw, honest, the kind that only comes when pride is finally laid to rest. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He offered his own, acknowledging the distance he'd created and the trust he'd fractured. I folded the letter gently, as though handling something sacred, and cradled it close. In that moment, I felt the years of silence dissolve, a slow but unstoppable release. The man who had once slammed doors in my heart had finally opened one, revealing his own reflection and the broken pieces he needed to mend. I didn't rush to reply. Instead, I poured a cup of tea and sat by the window, letter in hand, watching the light shift across the garden we once tended together. The roses I had pruned with her grandmother's guidance still bloomed defiantly, as though echoing the resilience I felt stirring inside me. That evening, I placed the letter on my table, no longer a symbol of pain, but the first page of a new chapter. I realized that apologies, when they come from the depths of regret, can heal wounds that decades of celebrations never could. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude for the courage it took him to write those words, and for the promise that one day soon our family's broken pieces would once again find their way home. This year dawned differently. No towering tents, no glittering chandeliers, no throngs of guests pouring through the gate. Instead, the garden was simple. A few folding chairs set beneath the old oak tree, the grass freshly mown and sprinkled with wildflowers I'd picked that morning. A small wooden table held a modest cake, its frosting lovingly smoothed by my daughter-in-law's careful hand. I paused at the gate, heart fluttering with a hope I hadn't dared feel in months. As I stepped inside, I saw there was one seat left unclaimed, right at the head of the table, marked by a single ribbon tied in lavender, the same color she'd always chosen. My granddaughter caught sight of me and broke into a run, her laughter ringing in the quiet air like a song I thought I'd forgotten. "Grandpa!" she cried, flinging herself into my arms with such fierce joy that all the pain of the past melted in her embrace. Behind her, my son watched with tears in his eyes, and when he stepped forward to place his hand on my shoulder, I felt the warmth of his apology in that gentle touch. We gathered around the cake together, 3 generations bound not by extravagant decorations, but by the simple act of making space for one another. As she blew out her candles, her cheeks brushed against mine, and she whispered, "I'm so glad you're here." In that moment, I understood that dignity isn't won through lavish displays or hidden generosity. It's honored in the invitation extended and the seat saved. And as the afternoon sun filtered through the oak leaves, I realized this quiet gathering of love and respect was more magnificent than any celebration I had ever orchestrated, because they hadn't just decorated a room, they had restored my place in their hearts, and that was the true celebration.